Morning, everyone.
Good morning, Rabbi.
We are learning Mishnah Shabbos, Parak Chaf, chapter 20. We're up to Mishna Daled, Mishnah 4. I dedicate this morning's learning in memory of my mother, Mrs. Shalamas Rabinowitz, Shalamas Bas Rabbi Yaakov Eliezer. Okay. Garfim Milafnei Hapatam. You can sweep dirt out from a trough, from a feeding trough that is placed before an ox is being fattened for slaughter. Okay, so you've got this, ox that, we want it to be eating. And the thing is that if there are certain types of, dirt, if dirt gets mixed in to the trough, it gets mixed with the food, the animal's not going to eat. So to be able to actually clear out, so the question is as to whether we're allowed to sweep out the trough from any kind of dirt to make sure that the animal will eat its food. And the Mishnah says that you could. You can sweep out the trough from before the animal being fattened. And you can move any excess straw over in order to prevent, on account of re'i. Re'i means dung. And that means that we're concerned that if we don't kind of move away the straw to the sides, and this is talking about, there's a lot of straw in front of the ox. We may move it away over to the side, or at least some of it over to the side, so that the animal who tends to step in its dung doesn't end up stepping on the straw, and then again make the straw unappetizing for it to eat. So we're saying here that in order to be able to allow the animal to eat and that its food shouldn't get dirty, we can either sweep out the dirt from the trough, or we can move it over to the sides, which somehow or another will make it less. I guess moving it over means we'll move it all the way over to the side. It doesn't need that much, I guess. And that'll prevent it from getting too many things dirty. Now, the Mishnah then continues, V'chachamim oisrin, and the Chachamim forbid. They say you're not allowed to do it. So the Bartenura explains that the issue here is the following. If the trough has an earthenware floor, then we are afraid that if you're sweeping it, then you may land up being mashva gumas. That means if there's any kind of either hill or a little, irregularity in the, it's not flat, you're going to want to fill it in. You're going to want to fill in the floor. You want to move around the dirt that everything should be even, which means you're going to be filling in any kind of holes. The reason you want to do that is because you don't want the food to get stuck in the holes. So the best way to have the floor for this trough is to have it, to have it even. So if while you're sweeping out the dirt, we're afraid you may come to even out the floor. You may come out to fill in those holes. If you fill in those holes on Shabbos, on an earthen floor, that's called baina. That's considered building. And therefore, therefore, if we're talking about a trough with an earthenware floor, no one holds you can sweep it. No one knows you can sweep it. And no one holds that you'd be able to move over the straw to the side. Now, there seem to be two explanations as to the problem with the straw. But we'll deal with one explanation, and that is that here too, if you're going to go ahead and move over the straw, my understanding is you may come to expose the earthenware floor while moving it over. You'll see that there is a little ditch in it, and you'll want to fill it in. So it's really both these things have the same problem if it's an earthenware floor. So when the Tanakama says you can do these things, he's talking about not an earthenware floor, talking about a wooden trough. It's got its own wooden bottom, and it's sitting on the ground. So since it's a wooden floor, there's no issues of filling in the dirt. There's no issues of, I'm going to sweep it, I'm going to clear it away, and then I'm going to have a problem. That's not typically the problem with a wooden floor. Therefore, the Tanakhama says, if there's no concern of filling in the holes, filling dirt into the holes, then there should be no problem using this trough, or meaning not using this trough, but cleaning out the trough. And I'm just going to mention that I'm not sure why the dirt in the trough isn't muktzah. Dirt is muktzah, but my understanding would be that the same way if something is in order to allow the animal to eat, the animal shouldn't be disgusted with its food. You can go ahead and move away the dirt. Kind of similar to what we have a halacha that we can move garbage off our table, even though it's essentially muktzah. We're still allowed to move it off. There's a special, the Chachamim said, garbage you're allowed to move away. Let it move off. You got to move it to get it away from you. So perhaps a similar thing counts for the dirt for the animal's food.
What is the reason?
Wait a second. For the dirt for the animal's food. Therefore, the issue is not so much the sweeping of the dirt. The issue is, are you going to come to even out? Are you going to come to fill in the holes in the floor? On that, the Tanna Kama says, if we're not talking about an earthen floor, there should be no problem. Next question.
I forgot already.
Okay, so there should be no problem. The Chachamim who forbid, they forbid because they are afraid that if we allow to sweep the floor of a wooden trough, the wooden floor of a trough, you may come to do the same thing by an earthen floor. Meaning, if we allow you to go ahead and sweep the wooden trough, the floor of the wooden trough, you may come to do the same thing when you have a trough that has an earthen floor, and then we have the concern you're going to come to fill in the dirt. So there, the Chachamim said, no sweeping out the trough or no moving the food over. Then Mishna continues, you can take food left over from one animal and put it in front of another animal on Shabbos. So you gave your animal to eat. There's food left food over, and you want to move that food over to another animal to eat. The Mishnah says you can do it. Why not? What's the question? So the question is like this. There could be situations, and there are situations, where leftovers of one animal, another animal will not eat. So if the situation is where if you take the animal to food from one animal, you give it to another animal, it's going to eat, you can assume it's going to eat, then no problem. But if you're not, but if the assumption would be that the animal is not going to eat it, and you want to go ahead and move it over to the other animal, maybe it'll eat it. Maybe today it's really hungry and it'll eat it. So then we say you can't do it. Because being that the assumption is that the animal will not eat it, then you're basically exerting yourself for no reason. And that the Chacham said you cannot do. It's not like the food is muktzah. But the point is that it's considered excessive work, excessive exertion, when at the end of the day you're schlepping that food over and it's not going to eat from it. Now the Bartanur explains that the situation is like this. If we're talking about food that was in front of a donkey, and now you want to move it over to an ox, no problem. It will eat it. But ox food to a donkey, the donkey will not eat it. That's because the ox drools over its food. And what? It drools. Drools over its food. And the donkey senses that. And therefore the donkey's not going to eat it. No, right. The other way around, though, surprisingly, doesn't seem to be a problem. Donkey leftovers, the ox will eat. So therefore, if you're going from the donkey leftovers to the ox, not a problem on Shabbos. From the ox to the donkey, it would be a problem because the donkey is probably not going to eat it, and that would be considered excessive work for you on Shabbos. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful Shabbos.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Torturing